There are some really important characteristics of effective partnerships. And I would say probably the most essential partnership is just awareness of the roles that various audiences, so if it's student affairs units, or if it's academic affairs, or in general, or faculty, or academic support services, partners bring different roles to any sort of learning community. So being clear about what are our roles and contributions, and then acknowledging what other people are contributing to the residential learning community is critical. So developing trust, communicating what our functions are, is something that I probably think is not done enough in the development of learning communities of any sort.
So what I think are some key aspects of a partnership between academic affairs and student affairs, I think the faculty are key. Because it's my contention that a living learning program that wants to be successful won't be successful without faculty advocacy and interest. I also think it's important, if you're talking about institutional transformation, to have the president and the provost be champions of this movement, because otherwise it becomes a small program driven by a few people, and if those people leave the institution, then there's no institutional infrastructure or support for continued success.
A faculty-centric model is absolutely key, because without a model that emphasizes the central role of faculty, it will be very difficult to persuade the rank and file of the faculty to buy into what is ultimately always going to be an experimental project with a risk-reward ratio that's high on the risk and low, potentially at least on the reward. We've heard this a lot at this conference. It's absolutely key to figure out how to establish lateral relationships between academic affairs and student affairs, and that really has to be translated into people terms. That's not so much, in the first instance, an institutional organizational goal. That's very much a human dilemma. And where do you find those people? And to be willing, if you think of a hierarchically organized, two hierarchically organized organizations, to find as many lateral connections between those two, oftentimes informal, and not even on the org chart, that slowly allow you to build trust, confidence, and thus leverage resources. You have to be able to leverage these resources, and I think that's key. Thirdly, I would say that student empowerment, which is my term, student empowerment is an absolutely key factor. Faculty would know this in terms of the decentered classroom, right? And the advantages that come from a decentered classroom when you actually, in fact, create an environment in which students feel themselves to be contributing members of a classroom. Student affairs professionals would know this, I think, in terms of a program that isn't so much imposed upon students as it is, harvested from their knowledge of student experience, both theoretical and experiential, and how much better that tends to work. In both those instances, students are empowered, and they have to be given, whether it's a brand new institutional structure or whether it's actually simply a smaller, minimally funded learning community, they have to be given an opportunity to feel themselves to be partners and contributors. Otherwise, they're off.
I think there are several characteristics of strong academic student affairs partnerships. The first is communication, and a lot of the communication involves trust. So having each other understand what each other's roles are and when it's appropriate for certain actions to be handled by certain folks, but then also regular communication to the other party to make sure that everyone understands what happened and how we move forward from there. I've seen a lot of partnerships break down because the situation was handled, but it wasn't then subsequently communicated to the other party, so misunderstandings ensued. I think a real essential ingredient is just passion. Interest and enthusiasm and excitement for being there, who wanting to be a part of that community, to wanting to see it grow. And as we've been talking about at this think tank, the the involvement of students and the engagement of students to get them excited and passionate about it as well. So they understand it's not just something they participate in, but it's something that they actually have a role in shaping.
Well, I can't stress enough the importance of the academic piece in creating a good living, learning community environment. Another piece that I think is important in creating a good living, learning community is the student affairs, academic affairs partnership, ensuring that both are kind of equal partners at the table that have a shared goal in mind and that can communicate effectively with one another.
Students live and learn in the same place. Our students don't live compartmentalized lives. I think in higher education, we've actually compartmentalized that. So I think some of the components, it's integrated. I think it's where students, it's where they're living and they're learning, they're doing that together. And so some of the key components are having resources to support that, a space that can support that. And I think what's really critical is having the academic side of the house say that this is a really important program and really supporting that across the board. So making it a university initiative as opposed to just an academic or a residential or student affairs initiative, making it a university initiative gives it a lot more credibility.
More nuts and bolts issue, but it's true, and I've said it over and over this morning, is it has to be appropriately resourced, and that includes personnel and staffing. It also includes funding, straight up funding, and it includes physical infrastructure as well. So those are the things that I think people think about less because they're more interested in the program aspect, but boring things like the building, do we have enough money to buy pencils, and who's going to rent the bus, those kinds of things really also have a huge impact on the success of the program.